This is THAAD, and it essentially turns Iran's missiles into little more than pea shooters. Thanks to this top-secret weapons system the U.S. just transferred to Israel, the U.S. is ensuring that it can take out virtually anything Iran tries to fire at them. But that's not all. In addition to THAAD, the U.S. has deployed the full range of its air defense systems to Israel. Because of this, Iran is cooked. Here's why. In mid-October, the Department of Defense confirmed the U.S. was sending THAAD to Israel in response to the unprecedented October 1st attack Iran conducted against Israel. THAAD is one of the U.S. Army's most advanced air defense weapons, and its presence in Israel signals a significant shift in the conflict. But what is THAAD, and why does it even matter? First entering service in the late 1990s, THAAD is a portable, mobile system designed to shoot down the world's most advanced ballistic missiles. THAAD is an incredibly expensive yet potent system at a cost of around $1 billion per battery. Although each missile costs a cool $15 million per shot, the reason for the eye-popping cost is all the associated equipment surrounding it. This is because THAAD is more than just Private Schmuckatelli using some Kentucky windage and a prayer to delete missiles out of the sky. Instead, THAAD is actually comprised of four major components. The first of these is the launch vehicle. Similar to most 4x4 heavy trucks you'd see in a cheap 80s war movie, these drivable Hollywood cliches house a launcher that can fit up to 8 interceptor missiles each. Each THAAD battery, of which there are 7 total in service, has 6 of these launchers for a total of 48 missiles per battery. But while the launch vehicle itself is not much different than most other launch vehicles used for mobile air defense in other militaries, the magic starts to happen when you look at the radars. THAAD incorporates a very high-frequency radar called ANTPY-2. With the ability to track missiles up to 3,000 kilometers away, there isn't a single place in Iran where the Iranians can launch a missile and THAAD not see it. But that's not even the best part of the ANTPY-2 radar. The radar has 2 modes of operation, forward-based mode and terminal mode. During forward-based mode, THAAD will track the incoming threat as it takes off from the ground, goes through its boost phase where it continues to climb, and then tracks it along its mid-course phase, where the missile continues on a straight path toward its target. Once it reaches its apogee, the highest point in its flight, the missile turns towards the Earth and begins its terminal phase towards the target. It's important to note that depending on the missile, its apogee could literally be in near-Earth orbit before coming back down. This does 2 things. Firstly, it increases the kinetic energy and, by extension, the damage from its blast, as well as increases its velocity significantly. And if you've ever shot a gun before, you'll know that shooting a fast-moving target is way harder than a slower-moving one. This is where the terminal mode of the radar comes into play. During the terminal phase of a missile path, it moves the fastest and is the hardest to shoot down since there's also not much time at this point. The ANTPY-2 radar has around 25,000 individual antennas, each blasting radiation at an unbelievably high frequency. THAAD's radar operates in the X-band spectrum at a frequency of 8 to 12 gigahertz. 1 gigahertz means a frequency of 1 billion waves per second, which means that for every second the radar operates, it's putting out at least 20 trillion waveforms into the atmosphere. With such a huge amount of data going out and coming back each second, THAAD has a very robust fire control center to handle all this. As a part of its fire control center, each THAAD battery has 2 tactical operation stations to process data, a launch control system to manage interceptor fires, and a station support group equipped with vehicles intended for holding cables, communications equipment, and data links to connect the battery within a larger air defense network. As the radar returns come back to the radar, the Fire Control Center interprets this data by displaying it and sorting the information to help operators distinguish between civilian and military aircraft, drones, and missiles. If the system detects a missile, Operators can then tell the computers to generate fire control solutions that are loaded into the missiles before firing. And this is where the THAAD really stands out. Each interceptor missile is around 18 feet long and weighs about 1,300 pounds. However, most of the weight is rocket fuel, since the missile is the closest thing to a speed of Mach Jesus on Earth, since as it heads towards the target, it's moving around 8 times the speed of sound. As it closes the target, the interceptor uses its own onboard radars to actively scan for the threat and correct its course as needed. However, what it does next literally comes out of a sci-fi movie. As it closes in on the threat, the interceptor doesn't explode. Oh no! The interceptor body separates from what is called the kill vehicle. Housed in the missile's nose cone, once it gets close enough to the threat, it will separate itself and literally come in like John Cena and smack it out of the sky with skin-to-skin contact. So, besides the absolutely insane way this missile shoots down threats, why does it matter for Israel? On October 1st, 2024, Iran made history once again. On that day, they fired approximately 180 ballistic missiles. Although U.S., British, and Jordanian aircraft, along with 2 U.S. destroyers, managed to shoot down about 20 missiles before they entered Israeli airspace, the bulk of these missiles made it to contend with Israeli air defenses. While Israel did manage to shoot down a lot of them, the October 1st attack was much more effective than their last attack in April. Although the fog of war persists, publicly available satellite images show at least 32 missile strikes at a major airbase that houses F-35s, several hits on another airbase, and a near-direct hit on a building that supposedly hosts Mossad personnel, in addition to several near misses on other military targets. From start to finish, these missiles took an average of around 12 minutes to reach Israeli airspace before being engaged. But why did this attack go so much better for Iran this time? One of the main factors was switching to primarily ballistic missiles. While the attack in April was bigger, with around 300 total projectiles launched, these included around 120 ballistic missiles and 30 cruise missiles, and the remainder were armed drones. Because of how slow the drones move compared to the missiles, Israel had about 8 hours of advanced warning before they had to actually engage any threats. By switching to only fast-moving missiles, including the supposed combat debut of the famed hypersonic Fatah II missile, Israeli troops were caught off guard. The secondary reason was Iran exploited a critical shortfall in the IDF's air defense network. Although Israel has defense in depth already with its existing air defense architecture between the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow, there is a single weakness. Thanks to systems like Arrow, Israel can attack threats from more than 2,000 kilometers away and at incredibly high altitudes. However, as the last attack against Israel proved, Israel's air defenses are weak against high-diving ballistic missiles as they enter their terminal phase. Though THAAD has an average range of around 150 to 200 kilometers, its ability to shoot down targets at altitudes of up to 150 kilometers, which is literally in outer space, makes it a game-changer for Israel's fight against Iran. Missiles like the Fatah II and the Khyber-Shakhan use this high-diving terminal phase designed to defeat air search radars. THAAD plugs a hole in this critical gap. By being able to strike targets all the way in space, Israel now has a defense against even the most advanced Iranian threats. But this is not the only aid America has given Israel that will make Iran think twice about attacking again. As of the making of this video, there are 2 entire career strike groups and an amphibious readiness group steaming in the waters of the Eastern Mediterranean, Red Sea, and Arabian Gulf. In total, these ships equate to almost 300,000 tons ready to dispense freedom anytime, anywhere Iran decides to find out. Iran's biggest concern if it tries to launch another large-scale missile attack is probably the U.S. Navy's cruisers and destroyers. The Surface Combatants are all equipped with the vaunted Aegis combat system. which is the most advanced and lethal combat system on board any warship in the world. What makes these ships such a potent threat to Iranian schemes to blast Israel into oblivion is the spy radar. The spy radar, which forms the core of the Aegis combat capabilities, is an incredibly powerful phased array radar that is constantly sending out pulses of energy looking for air contacts like THAAD, albeit at a much slower intensity. Spy is such a good system because it produces high-fidelity data on a warship that can move more than 30 knots. This mobility greatly enhances its around 200-mile range for its radars, which is further enhanced by the fact that multiple Aegis-capable ships can share data links. This is a game-changer. For example, a ship in the Red Sea picks up incoming air contacts from Iran over Jordan. The ship can then pass this data to another ship in the Mediterranean, who may not have even picked it up with their own sensors. The other ship can effectively hand off the engagement to the other and shoot down the threat as soon as it enters Israeli airspace. But the surface ships are not the only nightmare Iran has to contend with. In fact, while these surface combatants are helping clear the skies over Israel, it is the carriers that really make the Iranians shake in their boots. The USS Harry S. Truman and the USS Abraham Lincoln are currently operating there. Between the two of them, they can carry about 140 aircraft, including more than 80 advanced fighter aircraft like the F-35 and F-18, 10 F-18 Growlers, 8 E-2D Hawkeyes, and a ton of helicopters. Between these two carrier air wings alone, this force is among the world's top 25% of the strongest air forces right now. These carriers make up just 20% of the current carrier fleet. Thanks to advanced aircraft like the F-35, these ships can conduct combat air patrols and reconnaissance missions far beyond the limits of the Mediterranean Sea or Arabian Gulf. With a nearly 600-mile range for the F-35s and a 300-mile range on the Hawkeye sensors, the Navy can effectively create a screen over almost all of Iraq, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Syria, and Lebanon. If Iran fires a missile through any of those countries, naval forces are not only going to see it, but can shoot it down too. And if Iran thought these forces might disappear because of an election year, they would be sorely mistaken. In fact, the current U.S. defense spending means that the U.S.-Israel partnership is here to stay for a long, long time. The United States has continued to assure Israel that the U.S. is interested in ensuring Israel maintains a qualitative military edge, or QME, over its enemies in the Middle East. But how has this played out in practice? Over the years, Israel has received more direct military aid than any other country on the top 10 list combined. And that aid has only increased year over year since the start of the war in Gaza back in 2023. Since October 2023, the U.S. has provided over $17.9 billion in direct military aid to Israel. And this doesn't even include the roughly 100 arms sales made to Israel that fell below the reporting threshold to Congress. For this nearly $18 billion, the Israelis received $4 billion worth of missiles for its Iron Dome and David Sling air defense systems, $4.4 billion to replace military equipment given to Israel from U.S. inventories, a $3.5 billion slush fund to allow Israel to buy whatever it wanted through the Foreign Military Sale Program, $1.2 billion for the testing and implementation of the Iron Beam, a laser replacement of Iron Dome, as well as $1 billion for more artillery and mortar shells. These funds are in addition to the $8.7 billion military aid package Congress approved at the end of September 2024. But with all of these weapons, the U.S. inevitably finds itself entangled ever closer to a full-scale Middle East war. While U.S. troops have always been stationed in the Middle East, which continued even after the U.S. pullouts from Iraq and Afghanistan, the period now is the most dangerous time U.S. forces have faced since those two countries had ongoing full-scale combat operations. In Iraq, Syria, and Jordan, U.S. Army and Air Force personnel have continually come under attack from Iranian drones and missiles, usually from proxy forces. These attacks have not been without their casualties, like the infamous Tower 22 attack in January 2024 that killed or wounded 50 U.S. service members. At sea, there have been numerous reports of U.S. sailors on board destroyers being fired upon and defending themselves. All told, there has not been a single branch of the military that has, in some capacity, not been engaged by Iran or its proxy forces over the past year. Because of this, the U.S. finds itself teetering towards the edge of a precipice from which it may not be able to come back. With historic levels of lethal aid flowing into Israeli hands, along with Iran's continual brazenness for attacking U.S. troops, something is bound to happen soon enough. But if it did, Iran would learn what it truly means to be afraid. Bye for now.